Napier Mayor Kirsten Wise, thank you for your time today to chat to Hawke's Bay app. It's been a week like no other. Can you give me an update on how the recovery is going as far as you know and in your area of responsibility?
Sure, and thank you for having me. It's so important that we do get this information out to people. So we're getting there. We now have 87% of the Napier area back with power, which of course has been our number one priority over the last week. I understand our urban areas should all be back online within the next day or two, and then they can focus on those more rural areas, which will be longer term solutions for them. The other real core focus for us is, because so many of our community were without power for a number of days, just making sure that people have got food, that they've got fuel, that they're able to, provide their families with what they need. So busy working with all of our key partners around that, Tai Whenua and MSD obviously. And then we will be moving into actually those longer term needs and coming up with the planning to ensure that we can have the whole city and the whole region, in fact, moving forward to address the big issues that we're going to have to solve.
Yeah, so what are you personally focused on? Is it just a sort of a broad overview and sort of going in where you need it and sort of to sort out the priorities kind of thing?
So I've now started with the thing to remember, we are still currently in response mode. We do still have some of those really core response functions that we need to address, but I am now starting to put my mind into our recovery planning as well, and that needs to be separated into short term, medium term and long term. So I will be, over the next few days, pulling together with our staff an application for mayoral relief funding, because we know that we're going to need significant support from central government to actually support our community, and that is from the welfare perspective first and foremost, but also from an economic perspective. So we know that we've got local business owners that were already doing it tough, and now it's only going to be tougher. So how can we best support them so that they can best support their staff, and so that as a city and a region we can ensure that we recover from this and retain these local businesses that are so vital. The thing here for us in Napier that is really important for people to understand is that our needs are quite different to the rest of the Hawke's Bay region, and the other councils all have significant rural areas and primary sector industries which have absolutely been devastated through this event. We here in Napier are very much around tourism, events, small and medium locally owned businesses, and their needs are very different but just as important. So we need to focus on that alongside working with our partner councils to focus on the larger regional issues at the same time. So that's one of the areas that I'm really working on at the moment. What do we need here in Napier, and how do we work best with the central government to ensure that we get what we need?
Yeah, absolutely. And people forget that places like Eskdale are actually in Hastings, and that, so I suppose you don't have as much of that sort of road and infrastructure and that to look after. It's more, as you say, in an urban city and that sort of thing.
That's right. So certainly in terms of the roading network, the priority for us is obviously all those access bridges into the city. We got cut off, completely isolated. So we need to know that they are going to be a priority, or at least 2 or 3 of them will be a priority in terms of rebuilding that roading network. And it's, as you say, Esk Valley, Eskdale, Risington, Puketapu, Waiheke, these are all some of our communities that have been hit the hardest. They do sit within the Hastings District Council official boundary lines, but all of those communities identify with Napier. Their children go to our schools, they use our council facilities, they do their shopping in Napier, and I want to make it really clear to all of the residents and community members out there that we are going to support you and we will wrap our arms around you. We know that you actually consider Napier to be your home, and so we'll definitely be working really closely with Hastings District Council to support those communities.
Now, you mentioned the bridges, and I just heard earlier that apparently all the power and all the telecommunications is put under the bridges, and obviously when those were washed away, that went as well, as we know. Is that some of these sort of things, like sort of the Build Back Better, that you need to look at and see how can we do it so that when we do have something like this, heaven forbid, that everything, communications, isn't wiped out? Because that probably was one of the worst things for most people, apart from what some people went through, was the lack of communication.
Oh, absolutely. Lack of communication and lack of power were the two primary things for our urban area here in Napier. And there's going to be some huge learnings from this event in terms of that infrastructure, and that the fact that there was no backup whatsoever for the telecom cell towers going down, no backup for that. The fact that our major substation is located in an area that is at high risk of flooding. The fact that you've got these major lines going underneath a bridge that could collapse. So I think there's going to be some challenging conversations, but we can't back away from them, because we need to build the resilience to ensure that something like this does not happen again.
Now, as we all know, tragically, there have been losses of life and that, and there's lots of speculation online and that about how many. Do you think there is going to be a significant loss of life, and what about all those people unaccounted for? Are they just not being able to communicate, or is there genuine concern for them?
Oh, the police obviously are the lead agency with FENS on this, and we've very much been just, redirecting people to them with any questions that they have. We do know that there's still parts of the community that cannot be contacted, so I have been reassuring people that come to me directly. It may well be that they just still don't have their cell phones charged and don't have any way to connect with you, but certainly it's the police and that 105 number for anybody that is concerned about that.
Is there anything you think, obviously hindsight is exact science, but is there anything you think your council could have done infrastructurally and otherwise to lessen the impact of the cyclone?
So actually, we had some significant learnings out of our 2020 flood,
I was going to ask you about that.
We've invested in our stormwater over the last 2.5 years, and we've refined our systems and processes in the lead up to responding to an event such as this. So our network did exactly what it needed to do. There was no issues with our stormwater network. Our teams were out there in the lead up to the forecast weather, doing everything they need to do, clearing drains, the things that we ask our community to assist with as well. So, we're actually really proud that what we have done over the last 2.5 years meant that from an infrastructure perspective, the city coped and did really well. So the issue with this particular event was the fact that we had those breaches of our riverbanks and stock banks. And obviously that's going to mean that us alongside the regional council are going to be looking at what needs to happen to improve that infrastructure.
Are the stock banks in the wrong places? Should they be closer to the river? I've heard some people say, because being further away they often get build up of water, and that. I know you're not an expert on stock banks, but
that was going to be my answer actually. Like, sorry, I'm not prepared to comment on that. I would have no idea.
No, absolutely. Now, because you mentioned the Napier floods and that, so those houses that flooded during that time, they were okay this time?
On the whole, so the areas that were significantly impacted within our boundaries were around Taradale, Miani, Watoto, obviously, and Tiawa. Although I understand in terms of residential damage in Tiawa itself, it wasn't as bad as we initially thought it was going to be. We did have some areas of Piramai, Maraenui, impacted as well. So yes, sadly they were houses and whānau that were impacted from the 2020 storms.
Yeah.
So, you know, we are really wrapping our arms around those community members and making sure that they're getting what they need.
Yeah. Do you have a sort of rough idea of how many houses have been red stickered and yellow stickered and that?
We are close to actually having those completed for our boundaries. Up until yesterday, I believe we had no red stickers, but we do have some now. So we'll have a full report on those before the end of the week, and then we are actually going to be assisting the Hastings District Council, and it's our inspectors that are going out into the Esk Valley and Eskdale as well too, you know, just so, because as I said, we do very much identify them as being part of Napier, but we also wanting to help our partner councils with our resources.
I've heard some people say that this could be a good time to reignite the amalgamation debate. What do you say to that? Are you working effectively together? Would it make any difference if you were one single council?
So we are working very closely together. We have our regional leaders meeting every night at 6:30 so that we can keep each other updated and we can start making those decisions about things that need to happen at a regional level. And we're well aware of what those things are, because for the 3 years, over 3 years now, in my second term that I've been mayor, these are the conversations we've been having. So we know it's roading, we know it's housing, we know it's three waters. These are the things that we will commit to working on together. The flip side of that is what I mentioned earlier. For here in Napier, we have some very unique needs that I believe, if we were sitting as an amalgamated council across the whole of Hawke's Bay, would not be met.
Yeah.
Because there wouldn't be a mayor strongly advocating for what we need. So there is definitely that regional collaboration, which is absolutely vital, and we are doing it, but there is also still a need to have those individual councils that can focus on the individual needs of each area.
Yeah. And in terms of people who've had to move out of their houses, do you have evacuation centres here in Napier? And how full are those?
So we have just had one there's been several, but there was one that was still open this week. I understand that is due to be closed soon.
Oh, that's good news.
And
as long as the people are going to safe places.
That's right. Well, we won't close until they do go to safe places. We are very aware, however, that there are a number of families currently staying with friends and whānau, and if they're going to be displaced for a long-term period, then it's not practical for them to stay where they currently are. So we are, of course, looking to stand up Kennedy Park should we need to, just as we did after the 2020 floods. They've got the family units there with kitchens and the facilities for children, and so we're trying to quantify the volume.
Do you have any idea at this stage?
We don't at this stage. It's really difficult because the people that are bunking down with a friend or family member, their key focus at the moment is on their welfare, getting themselves sorted. They don't want us pestering them too much just yet about, where do you need to live? And they may not even know yet if they're going to be able to return to their homes or not. But we are out there, we are compiling that, and we're keen to know, because we do want to ensure that we've got enough accommodation to house them all and home them all.
Your counterpart in Hastings, Sandra Hazelhurst, suggested that they were speaking to the government about potentially even buying up some houses in her district. Do you think that's an option for you as well, to let people stay?
Oh, look, absolutely. We'll look at all options. The last thing we want is for people to have to move out of their city, out of their hometown. So, they've already lost so much, and for them not to be able to remain here close to their networks, their children remain in their schools, that's the absolute priority. Yeah.
And just in terms of the rebuild and that, I know there's been a figure of 13 billion, and then some economists say it's going to be 30 billion. What do you think, just from a council perspective, with all the infrastructure and bridges and that, what sort of bill are you looking at there?
Well, our probably biggest issue is our wastewater treatment plant, which is non-operational, and we have only just yesterday been able to actually gain access to it to start assessing the level of damage. But if that's a complete rebuild, then that alone, well, it cost us 35 million 10 odd years ago. So. So that's our biggie, and then, as I said, all these roading networks, and particularly the bridges and things in and out of our city, that's going to be billions and billions of dollars. The floodwater protection work around those stop banks and making sure that they are resilient enough for future events. It's definitely billions, and I can't even begin to, at this point in time, say what the numbers before that are. Yeah.
And the wastewater plant, just getting back to that. So what is happening there? Is it leaking? Is it, how's it been damaged?
No, it's just not operational. So it's not, the treatment of wastewater is not happening.
So what's happening to that, all that waste then? Is it...
So at this point, it's being discharged into the sea, but obviously because the treatment plant isn't operational. So that is a key area of focus for us, particularly now that we have been able to actually access the plant. Yeah. So we've got all hands on deck coming up with the plan around that.
So it's a priority, because where's it going into? Our area, that sort of area?
It's out to sea here.
So that's got environmental impacts as well.
Absolutely, yeah. So, it would be fair to say from an infrastructure perspective, that is our number one priority.
Yeah, no, fair enough, yeah. And now, do you think your council will be tougher in granting resource consent to properties that are deemed to be in vulnerable areas, and that, do you have the powers to even do that?
I think this is something that needs to be addressed at a national level, and without a doubt, there cannot be houses built in flood-prone areas. So one of our prime examples is the proposed subdivision on Riverbend Road, which is going through the fast-track process at the moment. I don't know if you've seen photos of what that was like after the rain, but it clearly demonstrated that that is not where you should be building houses, and we will be very, very adamant about that when we make a submission to that fast track process, if they decide to continue with it. We are very, very clear about where houses should be built here in Napier. It is around the Western Hills in Taradale, and it is around intensifying in our sort of urban areas close to where our shopping centres and things are. We've done a spatial plan, we know what needs to happen, and that's what we're going to be saying to central government.
Yeah, okay, no, that's all good. Because the Prime Minister was saying about rethinking how we do things, and that phrase "build back better" comes up, and just roads and things like that. I mean, with the hills, Bluff and Napier, and that, there's some very tricky and turny roads, and that. Does that need to be looked at? Can you even sort of change suburbs even like that? Is that too big to do that?
Look, and this is well, it's not a problem, but this is the challenge that we have as a country. There's going to be some really difficult decisions to be made with regards to our roads. The other part of it is our rural roads, where you've got almost just like a goat track going out to a rural area that is continuously getting washed out. And those roads, it's the ratepayers that are paying for it to be repaired. So, should we continue doing that? That's the questions that we have to ask. So
charging individual residents there, are you saying?
Well, I mean, that's what I'm saying. These are the difficult decisions that will need to be made, and we can't back away from having the conversation and making those decisions.
Now, in terms of rates, obviously some people have been affected. Do you have a rebate system or amnesty or anything like that for people who simply can't afford to pay the rates?
We will be offering a rates remission, we're having an extraordinary council meeting tomorrow because it does need to be a formal decision of council, and that's one of the things that we will be debating and offering to our community members that have been severely impacted.
So just a couple more questions. Just one, there's a lot of fear in the community with lawlessness and everything like that, and unconfirmed sort of rumours of people being sort of knocked on the door and being held up and things like that. What are you hearing from the police about this? Is this actually a reality, and what do you say to people about this?
So I am telling people, if they are concerned at all, if they're witnessing any crime or experiencing it, they must report it. If it's immediately life-threatening or highly dangerous, the 111 number. If it's something that you've observed or has just happened, the 105 number. The police cannot react or respond if they don't have a clear picture of what's actually happening. And I think what we're seeing is a lot of people are just like, oh well, it's not going to make any difference if I report. Well, it will, because we have heard from the police that they're saying that the crime levels aren't out of control, or even I think the statement was made that they're lower. I don't believe that is the case. I'm getting contacted by community members all the time who are witnessing things, who are feeling unsafe. So we just need to ensure that we're doing everything we can to have the right resourcing here to make our community feel safe. And I do just want to acknowledge that when I contacted Stuart Nash and Kieran McElnulty on Sunday to say we need more resources here, we need more police, they delivered on that, and we had more arrive on Monday.
Yeah. So you saying people aren't reporting these things because the police have said it's the burglaries and stuff like that are down. So you think it's people thinking, oh, don't need to report it, or?
I think there's an element of that, of people just thinking, well what's the point, but there is a point, because we can't get a true picture of what's happening unless people are reporting what they're seeing.
Now, on a personal level, have you been, or your family, been affected at all by all this?
No, I'm very, very fortunate, yes.
But that decision to declare a state of emergency, that must have been quite something for you as mayor.
Oh, it was deja vu.
Yeah, you've done it before, right?
I've done it before, a different time of the day. So yes, I got the phone call at about 3:20 in the morning, jumped in my car and headed straight down here. And obviously on the phone to Sandra as well, because we did declare at the same time. We could never have anticipated what was going to happen. We did meet as regional leaders with Civil Defence on the Monday evening, had a conversation about whether we needed to do a preemptive sort of declaration. All the modelling that had been done, all the analysis based on the information we had was not showing an outcome like what we ended up with. So do you
wish now you had done that? Obviously, hindsight is an exact science.
That's right. I mean, absolutely. And if we had any idea of the absolute devastation that was going to occur in particularly some of our outlying areas, then if we could turn back time, I'd definitely say that we would have declared and evacuated earlier.
What's your one image or sense that comes from this whole thing? Positive or negative?
Oh gosh, I think my initial thing is just heartbroken for all of our community, but then from that it's heartwarming, because the stories we're hearing, the way that parts of our community have reached out and wrapped around other parts that are hurting so much, and there's so many incredible people and organisations out there who are just stepping up and doing what needs to be done. And a personal thank you from me to everybody who is doing that. And the only way we will get through this is if we all pull together and we all play our role, and we will get through this.
Mayor Kirsten Wise, thank you so much for your time, really appreciate it, and all the best with the pretty tough job you've got going ahead.
Busy time ahead, but thank you, Andrew.
Thank you so much.